Stop for a second. Don't rush past this, because something is already shifting around you, and you can feel it, even if you can't explain it. This isn't about fear or pressure. It's about timing. There are moments in life when things quietly reach a breaking point, when something that's been building in the background finally starts to collapse or release, and right now, you're standing in one of those moments. The reason this feels different is because this isn't happening in front of you. It's happening around you, behind situations, behind conversations, behind delays that never made sense. And now, it's coming to an end. You may have felt it recently. That strange tension, that unexplained heaviness, or even moments where your focus just wasn't clear. Like something was slightly off, but you couldn't point to exactly what it was. That wasn't random. That was pressure from something unseen, something you weren't meant to fully understand while it was happening. But now that pressure is breaking. And according to God, this isn't the moment to panic or react. This is the moment to stay calm and observe, because when something hidden ends, it doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it reveals itself through subtle changes, through silence where there used to be tension, through clarity where there used to be confusion. And if you're not paying attention, you might miss the significance of what's happening. That's why you're here right now, hearing this, before everything becomes obvious. So stay with this, stay present, because what's ending in this moment is not small. And what follows next will begin to show itself sooner than you expect. Now this is where things start to make sense. Because what you've been feeling lately hasn't been random or imagined. It has been the result of something building quietly around you. There has been a kind of invisible pressure, not always obvious, but present in small ways. Maybe your thoughts felt scattered at times, or your energy shifted without a clear reason. Maybe situations that should have moved forward stayed stuck, or people acted in ways that didn't fully add up. That kind of inconsistency creates a subtle tension, the kind that you carry without realizing how much it's affecting you. But according to God, that tension wasn't permanent. It was part of a phase that is now coming to an end. You have been moving through something that didn't fully show itself on the surface. It wasn't something you could easily explain to others, because there wasn't always a clear event or reason behind it. It was more like a pattern. Delays that kept repeating, moments of doubt that came out of nowhere, or a feeling that something wasn't aligning the way it should. These kinds of experiences often feel personal, like something is wrong within you or your decisions. But the truth is, not everything you feel originates from you. Sometimes, it's the result of external pressure, circumstances or environments that are temporarily out of sync with your direction. And when you're inside that kind of phase, it can be difficult to trust your own instincts. You start second-guessing things that normally feel clear. You hesitate when you usually move forward. You question situations that you once would have handled with confidence. That's what makes this kind of invisible struggle so challenging. It doesn't always show up as something obvious, but it slowly influences how you think, how you react, and how you see your path. But what's important to understand is that this phase was never meant to last. It had a limit, even if you couldn't see where that limit was. You may have also noticed that certain things didn't progress the way you expected, no matter how much effort you put in. That's another sign that something larger was at play. When effort doesn't match results, it often means timing isn't aligned yet. And timing is something that operates beyond immediate control. God often allows these pauses not to block you, but to prevent things from moving forward prematurely. Because if something moves before it's ready, it doesn't last. So what feels like resistance is sometimes protection, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment. At the same time, this phase has been shaping you in ways you might not have fully noticed. It has been teaching patience, sharpening awareness, and forcing you to pay attention to details you might have overlooked before. Even the moments of frustration carried a purpose, because they made you more aware of what feels right and what doesn't. And that awareness becomes important now, because as this pressure lifts, you'll start to see things more clearly than before. What's happening right now is not just the end of something unseen. It's the release of that pressure. And when that happens, you don't always see a dramatic change instantly. Instead, things begin to feel lighter. Decisions feel easier. Situations that once felt complicated begin to simplify. You may notice that your thoughts become clearer, your reactions more stable, and your sense of direction stronger. That's how you recognize that the shift is real. So if you've been feeling like something was off, like you were navigating through something you couldn't fully define, trust that you weren't wrong. You were simply in a phase that is now closing. And as it closes, it creates space for something new to move forward without the same resistance. Stay aware of these changes, because the same sensitivity that allowed you to feel the pressure will now help you recognize the relief as it fully unfolds. Now this is the turning point, the moment where everything begins to shift from something you felt internally into something you can actually recognize externally. Because when a hidden battle ends, it doesn't always come with a loud announcement or a dramatic event. Most of the time it shows itself through change, subtle at first, but undeniable once you start paying attention. And this is why the message is not to panic or react, but to stay calm and observe. God is not asking you to fight anything anymore, because the phase that required resistance is already ending. What matters now is awareness, because what happens next may appear ordinary on the surface, but it carries meaning beneath it. You may start to notice small shifts almost immediately. A situation that felt tense suddenly becomes quiet. A delay that stretched for too long begins to move without explanation. A person who seemed distant may act differently, or someone you weren't expecting might suddenly appear in your space. These are not coincidences. These are signs that something behind the scenes has changed, and now the effects are beginning to show in real time. But the key here is that these changes won't force themselves on you. They will reveal themselves to you. And if you're distracted or expecting something dramatic, you might miss the significance of what's actually happening. There is also something important about how natural this shift will feel. When something truly changes at its root, it doesn't feel chaotic or overwhelming. It feels aligned. It feels like things are finally moving the way they were supposed to. You won't feel the same resistance that you were feeling before. Instead, there will be a sense of flow, even if everything hasn't fully resolved yet. That flow is your confirmation that the pressure has lifted. It's the difference between pushing against something and suddenly realizing you don't have to push anymore. At the same time, you might experience moments of clarity that seem to come out of nowhere. Thoughts that were once unclear suddenly make sense. Decisions that felt complicated become simple. You may even find yourself understanding past situations in a completely different way. That's because when the hidden struggle ends, it removes the layer that was clouding your perspective. And once that layer is gone, you're able to see things as they actually are, not as they felt under pressure. God often works through this kind of clarity. Where the answer isn't forced on you, it becomes obvious once the confusion is gone. Another thing you need to watch for is how your environment begins to respond differently. Conversations may shift in tone. Opportunities may appear in places that were previously quiet. Even your interactions with others may start to feel smoother, more direct, less complicated. This is not something you need to create. It's something you will notice if you stay present. Because when a phase ends at a deeper level, everything connected to it begins to adjust as well. But here's where most people make a mistake. They try to act too quickly. When something starts to change, there is a natural urge to control it, to push it forward, or to make sure it doesn't slip away. But this is not that kind of moment. This is not about forcing outcomes. It's about recognizing that the shift has already happened and allowing it to unfold naturally. When you stay calm, when you observe instead of react, you position yourself to move with the change instead of against it. So as this unfolds, don't look for something loud or dramatic to confirm it. Pay attention to the quiet changes, the small movements, the subtle signs that something has shifted in your favor. Because those are the real indicators. And once you start noticing them, You'll realize that what you were dealing with before is no longer holding the same power over your path. Now this is the phase where the results of that hidden battle begin to surface in ways you can no longer ignore. And this is also where your understanding deepens. Because when something ends at a deeper level, it doesn't just disappear, it leaves behind clarity. You start to see people, situations, and even your own past decisions with a different level of awareness. Things that once felt confusing begin to feel obvious. And that shift in perception is just as important as any external change, because it gives you control over how you move forward. God is not just ending a phase around you, but also removing the confusion that came with it. You may begin to notice that certain people start acting differently, and this is one of the clearest signs that something has shifted. Someone who once created tension may no longer have the same influence. Someone who stayed distant might suddenly become more open, or the opposite could happen. Someone who seemed close may begin to fade away without conflict or explanation. These changes are not meant to create instability. They are part of realignment. When a hidden struggle ends, it also removes the energy that was holding certain dynamics in place. And once that energy is gone, people naturally reveal where they actually stand. This can feel surprising at first, especially if you were used to a certain pattern. But instead of questioning it too much, observe it. Because what you are seeing now is more accurate than what you were seeing before. The pressure that once distorted things is no longer there, so what remains is closer to the truth. And truth doesn't always need to announce itself loudly. It becomes clear through consistency, through behavior, and through the absence of confusion. At the same time, situations that once felt blocked may begin to move forward, sometimes in ways that seem almost effortless compared to before. You might find that something you struggled with suddenly resolves, or that a path opens without the same level of resistance. This doesn't mean everything changes instantly, but it does mean that the force that was slowing things down is no longer present. God often works through these kinds of shifts, where what was once difficult becomes manageable, and what once felt uncertain becomes clear. There is also an emotional aspect to this phase that you may notice. The weight you were carrying begins to lift, even if you didn't realize how heavy it was until now. You may feel calmer, more grounded, or simply less affected by things that once triggered strong reactions. That emotional shift is not accidental. It's a sign that you are no longer under the same internal pressure. And when your internal state stabilizes, it naturally changes how you interact with everything around you. Another important thing to pay attention to is how your instincts begin to sharpen. When confusion fades, your ability to sense what feels right and what doesn't becomes stronger. You may find yourself making decisions more quickly, trusting your judgment without needing as much validation from others. That clarity is a direct result of the shift that has taken place. It's not something new being added. It's something that was always there, now no longer being clouded. But even with all these changes, this is not a moment to rush ahead or try to control every outcome. This is a moment to stay steady and let things reveal themselves fully. When you allow the process to unfold, you gain a deeper understanding of what is changing and why. That understanding is what helps you make better decisions moving forward, decisions that are based on clarity rather than reaction. So as this phase continues to unfold, keep your focus on what is becoming clear rather than what is falling away. Because what is leaving your life is making space for what aligns with you now. And what is aligning with you now is a reflection of the shift that has already taken place. Stay calm, stay aware, and let the changes show themselves without forcing them, because everything you are starting to see now is part of a larger movement that is still unfolding in your favor. Now, this is where everything comes together, not in a loud or overwhelming way, but in a steady, undeniable shift that you can feel within yourself and see around you. The hidden battle that once created confusion, delay, and pressure has reached its end, and what replaces it is something very different. Clarity, calm, and movement that no longer feels forced. This is not a moment of struggle anymore. This is a moment of transition, where you move from reacting to what was happening around you into recognizing what is now opening in front of you. God is not asking you to do more, fight harder, or prove anything. The hardest part has already passed. What matters now is how you stand in this new space that has been created. You may begin to notice that your mindset is shifting in ways that feel natural rather than forced. Thoughts that once circled in doubt begin to settle. Questions that once felt urgent begin to lose their intensity. It's not that everything has been answered all at once, but rather that you no longer feel the same pressure to chase answers. That is a powerful change, because it means you are no longer being pulled in multiple directions by uncertainty. Instead, you are beginning to move with a sense of direction that feels stable and grounded. This is how you know that the shift is real. It doesn't demand your energy, it supports it. There is also a growing sense of trust that starts to return, not just in external situations, but within yourself. When you've been in a phase where things felt unclear or delayed, it's easy to lose confidence in your own judgment. But now, as things begin to align, you'll notice that your decisions feel more certain. You won't need as much reassurance or confirmation from others. That internal clarity becomes your guide, and it allows you to move forward without hesitation. God often restores this kind of trust quietly, not through dramatic signs, but through a consistent feeling that things are finally making sense. At the same time, the way opportunities appear may start to change. Instead of struggling to create movement, you may find that things begin to come toward you more naturally. Conversations open up, situations resolve, and paths that once felt blocked begin to clear. This doesn't mean everything happens instantly, but it does mean that the resistance you were facing is no longer controlling the pace. Now your actions and your environment begin to work together rather than against each other, and that cooperation creates momentum. But even in this moment, there is something important to remember. This is not about rushing ahead or trying to control what comes next. It's about maintaining the calm that brought you here. When you stay grounded, you allow the shift to continue unfolding without interruption. When you react too quickly or try to force outcomes, you create unnecessary tension again. And that's not where you are anymore. You've moved beyond that phase. Now your role is simply to stay aware and respond with clarity rather than urgency. You may also notice that certain things no longer hold your attention the way they once did. Situations that used to feel important may now feel distant or irrelevant. This is not loss, it's alignment. It's a sign that you are no longer connected to the same patterns or pressures that once influenced your decisions. And as those connections fade, they create space for something new to take their place. That new space is where growth happens, where better opportunities appear, and where your energy can finally be directed towards something that moves you forward instead of holding you back. So as you move from this moment into what comes next, understand that this is not the end of something meaningful. It's the beginning of something more aligned with who you are now. The hidden battle has ended, but the results of that ending are still unfolding. Stay calm, just as you were guided to do. Stay present with what is changing. Because from this point forward, you are no longer navigating through pressure. You are moving through clarity. And that clarity will continue to guide you, step by step, into what is meant to come next.